Well, we're going to go ahead and get things going. Welcome, everyone, to this edition of the AEDC Voice webinar series. We've got a great topic today. Alaska's elections are changing this year. The voter-approved laws take effect in 2022 with Alaska-style elections that give voters more choice, more voice, and more power. You're attending this webinar today to learn more about the new top 4 primary and ranked choice voting coming to all state elections this summer and fall. I'll introduce our guest speaker here in just a moment, but right now I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to our great sponsors from People AK, which consists of Alaska Executive Search and Bradison Management Group. Katie Lowers is here today to share with us a best practices moment from People AK. So Katie, take it over.
Thank you, Bill. For those of you who've been on in previous webinars, we've been talking a lot about the great resignation and the great reshuffling that's happening with our workforce. Currently, research shows that development and growth opportunities are the #1 reason that people are leaving their current jobs. So with that, we encourage you to start developing and training your managers to have some constructive conversations from the get-go. You can have a variety of conversations. One of them includes quick connects, where you just swing in the office, shoot an email, shoot a text, just check in with your staff. It shows that you care and that as a manager, you're available. You should have monthly check-ins where you review expectations, obstacles, and then identify how you can support them in their workload. You should have developmental conversations that focus on more immediate and real-time feedback in a group setting so that you can spot opportunities to learn in a shared experience. And then progress coaching, that would be your typical annual performance review. It should look more like a 6-month performance review where you cover performance and developmental goals for the individual and the team. And that's all from us.
Thanks so much, Katie. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get to the main topic at hand. Again, we're here today to talk about ranked choice voting that will be taking place in our primary and general election system this year. And we have a great organization here to talk to us about it, Alaskans for Better Elections, which is a nonprofit organization made up of Alaskans from every region and political affiliation across the state who are committed to working with and educating voters about the new Alaska-style elections. We're joined today by Jason Grenn, who's the executive director for Alaskans for Better Elections. He's a 4th-generation Alaskan. Jason was born and raised in Anchorage and recently served as an independent state representative in the Alaska State House, where he led the fight on legislative ethics reform and championed economic development for Alaska. He and his wife, Jana, have been married 19 years and are raising 3 small children in the same neighborhood they grew up in. I know that feeling, Jason. Good on you. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the AEDC Voice today, Jason Grenn.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Pleasure to be here, and thank you to AEDC for welcoming us and having us discuss this very timely and important topic that's going to be facing all of us as Alaskan voters here in the next couple weeks and several months this year. So again, really appreciate the time, and thank you for coming to attend to learn more about how to fill out your ballot correctly, how to understand ranked choice voting and the open primary a little bit better. And really appreciate you coming today. So I'm going to share my screen now. We'll get into the presentation and we will go through this. Definitely want to leave time for questions and answers. And hopefully with this conversation, we can just have a good explanation of what's going on this year. But happy to answer any sort of question that you may have, whether it's a detail or just something about your ballot, anything, happy to talk more about it. So Alaskans for Better Elections is a 501c3 and C4. So our work is done entirely with a nonpartisan focus, really focused on talking to every voter across the state so that they can be empowered, confident when they vote this year, and really be excited, actually, in a lot of ways, be inspired about some of these changes. And we'll talk about the end as you as community leaders and people with different networks and talking to family and friends, how you can help make sure that these elections are successful. So we'll start off with just briefly why change needs to happen in our state regarding our election system. We'll go through the two big changes that are facing Alaskan voters. And then, as I mentioned, ways that you can help make sure that this election is successful. So one of the problems we had in our state was something called the closed primary system. For the past 20 years, Alaska had a closed primary, which means when you went to vote in August, you had to declare your party affiliation and choose a ballot. We were actually one of only 9 states that had a closed primary. And now with 63% of Alaskan voters actually don't affiliate with one of the 2 major parties. This was excluding nonpartisan voters, independent voters from voting for who they wanted to. So that closed primary system was excluding people from voting and expressing themselves on the ballot. And so with the new system, with all voters receiving the same ballot, all voters being able to choose who they want to, regardless of their party affiliation, we think this will be better reflective of Alaskans' desires and focus when it comes to choosing their elected leaders. Another problem we had in Alaska is something called plurality elections, or first past the post elections, which is really how most places conduct their elections. But in Alaska, we had a long history of electing leaders without the majority support from their district or their state. We've had 8 different governors win with less than 50% of the majority vote, and no U.S. Senate candidate has received more than 50% of the vote since 2002. And so, as I mentioned, with our long history of third-party candidates, independent candidates, even write-in candidates, this wasn't truly representing Alaskans' desires and wishes and reflective of what they wanted out of their elected leaders, and really showing that majority support as we send people to Juneau and Washington, D.C. So what are we doing right now? The state of Alaska, the division of elections, Alaskans for Better Elections, all sorts of different groups and organizations and individuals are helping with the implementation of these new changes and the education of these new changes. Implementation, we're doing things like upgrading the software to the ballot tabulators, going through the regulation process with the Department of Law and the Division of Elections, making sure that T's are crossed, I's are dotted, and making sure that the laws on the books are reflective of what the ballot measure intended to do. There was also had to be new tabulators purchased. About 120 communities around the state were still doing hand counting on election night. And so with ranked choice voting, it makes it a lot easier if you can use software, and new tabulators were purchased for these communities to make it easier and also more transparent. In the education work, you probably have already seen it starting, but you've probably seen ads and bus signs and mailers and things like that. But all of this work is done entirely nonpartisan. As I mentioned, Alaskans for Better Elections, we're really focused on the how about your ballot, and not about endorsing candidates or endorsing political platforms or anything like that. But our work is done entirely interactive and broadly across our state. We're doing presentations like this, different types of fun events, trying to reach every sort of group and organization, and also every region around the state. And so we're working with organizations and individuals to really make sure that every Alaskan, when they receive that ballot in the mail this year, or they go to the ballot booth, that they know how to fill it out correctly. So what are these 2 big changes that are facing voters this year? Well, the first change that's coming up rather quickly is our new open primary system. An open primary system is really just a primary election that doesn't require you as a voter to declare the party affiliation to participate. If you've voted here in the last 20 years, as I've mentioned, you went to your ballot location, your voting location, and you were asked what's your party affiliation and what ballot do you want. No longer will that be the case in the state of Alaska. You can see here on this map that open primaries is actually very common throughout the United States. Many states use an open primary or a semi-open primary system. 2 states use a system that is going to be more similar to our system than any other state, though, and that's Washington and California. Washington and California use a top 2 nonpartisan open primary, which means that the top 2 vote getters in each race go on to the general election, regardless of their party affiliation. What they were finding in California and Washington, though, is that many times that the top 2 vote getters are sometimes, or more likely, to be of the same political party. And so in our system, we'll be using a top 4 open primary system, which means that the top 4 vote getters, regardless of their party affiliation, will move on to the general election. So you could have 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, 3 Republicans, 1 Democrat, 2 Democrats, 1 Republican, and a nonpartisan. Regardless of party affiliation, the top 4 vote getters will move on to the general election. And from there, we'll move on to the general election. And we'll talk about that here in a moment. This is a sample ballot from the state of Alaska for the primary election. This ballot actually will be slightly altered because of the new special election on top of this. But as you can see, it looks very similar to what you've probably used in the past. It has all the different races. It's got a bubble on the left. It's got a candidate's name on the right. And then you fill in just one person. You vote for one person in each race, just like you have in the past primary elections you've participated in. One other change that's happening in our elections, though, as you can see here on the bottom left-hand corner of this ballot, is that the governor and lieutenant governor are actually running together before the primary. Usually in our state's voting history, governors would run in a primary, lieutenant governors would run in a primary. The winners of each of those would then be matched up to run together in the general. Well, this system now has the governor, lieutenant governor running together ahead of time. If you've noticed, many of the gubernatorial candidates have already matched up with lieutenant governor, and it gives voters more of a chance to see that team in action, what their strengths and weaknesses are, how they campaign together, how they work together. And it gives voter a much longer and much more insight to knowing how those teams are going to work together before they vote for them. So how does the open primary system work? As I've mentioned, all voters, all of us Alaskans are going to be receiving the same ballot, different on where we live, but we'll get just one ballot. And then from there, you vote for just one candidate in each race. So as a Republican or Democrat, you can now vote for a Republican or Democrat. In the past, you wouldn't be able to. And now you have more freedom, more expression of your ballot and vote for who you want for. And then from there, the top 4 vote getters will move on to the general election. Obviously, if there's 2 or 3 or 4 candidates in each race, 2 or 3 or 4 candidates would move on automatically. But if there's 5 or 6 or 7, like in the US Senate race or the governor's race, only the top 4 vote getters, regardless of their party affiliation, will move on. So again, in open primaries, in each race, you pick just one person, and then the top 4 vote getters in each of those races move on to the general election. The general election is where change number 2 is happening. Change number 2 is our new ranked choice general election. Ranked choice voting allows for voters to rank their candidates in order of a preference. Voters can rank as many as they like or as few candidates as you like. We'll talk about that more later, but you now as a voter, you get to show your spectrum of approval and show your preference of these candidates in an order of 1, 2, 3, and 4. Ranked choice voting sounds relatively new. It sounds like a unique system, but as you can see here on this map, ranked choice voting is used throughout the United States in various ways. In fact, it's used in Australia for the past 100 years. It's used in Ireland, Scotland, and many other countries around the world. But here in the United States, it's used in many different ways. You can see here, Maine is the other state that uses ranked choice voting. And then many southern states use it for their military and overseas voting. And then cities like New York City, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Santa Fe, New Mexico, San Francisco, California use it at a municipal level. And in fact, 23 cities just used it in Utah for the first time this fall. And then other organizations and parties, political parties use it as well. The Utah Republican Party uses it for a nominating process. The Virginia Republican Party used it last fall to nominate now Governor Youngkin. And so it's gaining a lot of momentum, and it's something that is being seen as a way to cut costs, cut negative advertising, and other benefits, especially at the municipal level. But Alaska is the first and only state that'll be using a top 4 open primary system combined with a ranked choice voting general election. This is the sample ballot from the state of Alaska. This is for the November general election. You can see that it looks a lot different than your ballot in the past, but it's got instructions on the top. So make sure that voters can read those. They can understand how to use their ballot correctly. And then it has all the races down below. And you'll see that the candidates are on the left. There's choices on the right. And I'll zoom in here in just a moment. You can see what it looks like at a closer look. But luckily, instructions on the top, and there'll be posters in the voting locations, posters in your voting booth, and so and all of this work is combining so we make sure that every Alaskan knows how to fill this out correctly. So how do you fill it out correctly? Well, this is one example of someone who filled out their ballot. They decided that they liked all 4 candidates in some way, and they wanted to show their support in some way, and so they filled it out 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this voter decided to vote for moose first, whale second, bear third, and their fourth choice was Eagle. So again, their choice to rank all 4 candidates, and they did so correctly. So how do you fill it out? Well, it's easy as 1, 2, 3. It's a 1, 2, 3 step process. Number 1 is to find your top candidate. This is your first choice. This is the person you like the most, and you consider them the number 1 choice out of all the other candidates. And you fill in the bubble, the first choice bubble next to their name. Step 2, if you have a second choice candidate that you want to support, again, not required, but all you need to do is fill out the second choice column next to that candidate's name and make sure that it's not the same as your first choice candidate. And then step 3 and step 4, though not required, same step as step 2, is you fill in the third choice next to that candidate's name and you fill in the fourth choice column next to that other candidate's name. This is something we don't recommend doing. This is something that won't help the candidate that you might think it might be helping. So in this case, this is the summer, winter, spring, and fall race in the US Senate race. This person decided that they love winter so much. For some reason, winter is their favorite candidate and they want to support them in a really big way. And so they've filled out every choice for winter. Well, in this case, you would put this into the machine. The machine would reject it because it would read it as, well, we have a first choice for winter, but as we look, we don't have a second choice for someone else. And obviously we have something in this country with 1 person, 1 vote. This would violate that. You can't vote for 1 candidate more than once. And so that this part of the ballot, after your first choice for winter, would be considered spoiled, and it wouldn't help winter in any other way. This is something also that would spoil your ballot. This person decided that they can't decide who they like best between summer, winter, spring, and fall. So they were going to give a first choice to everyone. Well, again, just like in previous elections, you can't fill in more than 1 bubble for this race. And so you would put this in the machine and would get rejected. Luckily, great poll workers would come over, help you out, see if you need to make any changes. But if you decided to put this back into the machine to count your vote, none of this would help any candidate. None of this would be counted for any candidate at all. And then this is another example, though it's very, very rare. In some instances, people have decided, well, I want to give my first choice to someone and then my fourth choice to someone. You would put this in a machine. It would count it for your first choice. You would get the first choice for winter. But the statute states that if you skip 2 or more columns, that nothing else would count. And so in this case, winter would get your first choice, but fall would not receive any sort of support from you at all. So how are votes counted after you put your ballot in? Well, again, looking at this race, the summer, winter, spring, and fall race for the US Senate, it's election night. We've looked at our ballot, we've filled it in, we've put it in, the polls are closed. And so what happens post polls closing, and how do we count all of these ranked choice voting? Well, with ranked choice voting, the goal is to get to 50% plus 1. As I mentioned, we really want to show that we are sending people to Juneau and Washington, D.C. with the majority support of the voters in that district or in that state. And so we want to get to 50% plus 1. So what happens when we don't get to 50% plus 1? Well, you can see here that in this instance, in our fake race between winter, summer, fall, and spring, that the first round of counting has happened, and winter is barely winning with that 34% over fall with maybe 32%. And then spring and summer are in the 3rd and 4th place. So with ranked choice voting, if no one receives 50% plus 1 of the vote, we need to eliminate a candidate and then distribute their choices to the other candidates. So you see that black bar, that 50% line on this graphic. We want to get one of those candidates over that line. And so in this case, we need to eliminate a candidate since no one received 50%, and we're going to eliminate summer. And so what happens is we look at everyone who ranked summer number 1, and we look at their ballots and we say, who did those voters rank number 2? So if you ranked summer number 1, who did you rank number 2? And then we're going to move your ballot to that candidate. So this is what happens. Winter gained a little bit, fall gained a little bit, spring gained quite a bit more than the other 2 candidates. But again, you can see no one has received 50% plus 1. And so what do? Well, we need to eliminate another candidate. And so in this case, spring would be the last place candidate. And so what do? We look at everyone who voted for spring number 1, and we ask, who did they rank number 2? And then we look say, who did this people who voted for summer number 1 and then spring number 2, who did they rank number 3? And we're going to move and distribute the ballots next. So spring is now eliminated. And this is what happens. Winter gained a little bit, but fall gained quite a bit more. And actually, you can see here that fall gained just enough to cross that 50% plus 1 threshold. And in this case, fall would be declared the winner. So in the old system with plurality voting, winter with that 34% in a 4-way race would have won the election with 34%. But we're aiming at that majority support. And so now we can say that fall is the winner. Fall will be representing its district or its state with a true majority support of the area. So obviously the official winners can't be declared until all the votes are counted, just like in previous elections. So we have to make sure that all the early votes, election day votes, absentee votes are in. We don't want to eliminate anyone early. And so we want to make sure that every vote is in. In Alaska, we have a statute. We've had a statute for a long time now that says that we need 15 days, up to 15 days to allow votes to be received. And so the true winner, the official winner won't be declared until after that window is closed and all the votes are counted. And then that round by round total that I showed you, kind of the step-by-step process, all of that information will be released by the division elections once the races are certified. So we're going to do a quick, fun, interactive mock election on our own. If you want to grab a smartphone, if you have one nearby, and open up your camera. This won't sign you up for anything. There's no ads or no one collects any data. But if you open up your camera app and you scan this QR code, and you don't have to take a photo, it should pop up a new browser for you, and it's from our rankedvote.com website. And we're going to vote for our favorite season and find out who wins here. And I did not clear the votes from the previous election we did yesterday with the same one, so it's going to be pretty higher than our participants here. But it'll show you how all this works just on your phone. So open up the browser. It's pretty intuitive. It should say rank your vote, and you get to pick your season 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, you don't have to rank everyone. If for some reason you don't like spring or you don't like fall or maybe not even winter, you don't have to rank them. And so choose who you want, 1, 2, 3, 4, hit that submit button, and it's going to say, thank you for your vote. And if you hit the next button, preliminary results, it's going to show you who is going to win and how. And so it looks like we're up to, again, not that many voters in this presentation, but so you need 110 votes to win in this race, and it looks like you need 56 of the 110 votes to win. So if you scroll down just a little bit, you can see the round by round how summer ends up winning this race. Not a surprise here for Alaskans, but in round 1, no one received 50% of the vote, and so we had to go to the next round. So we eliminated spring and distributed those ballots to the other candidates. And if you scroll down a little bit on that browser, you can read more about who won, what does each round mean, finding out how many votes to win, things like that. And so it's got a lot more information if you want to take the time to read more. So what are some of the benefits from ranked choice voting? Well, ranked choice voting, for one, it eliminates the spoiler effect, or eliminates what people sometimes call vote splitting, or voting for the lesser of two evils. If you've ever had a vote in a race where there's maybe 3 or 4 candidates, and you might think to yourself, man, I really like, candidate X, but they're not going to win. They don't have a lot of money. They don't have big name ID, but I really like them and I wish I could support them. I wish I could vote for them, but I don't want to waste my vote. With ranked choice voting, that's eliminated. It eliminates anyone who might be a spoiler, because now you can vote for that person who maybe has low voter name ID, but you want to show your support. You can vote for them, number 1. And if they're eliminated, you have that backup choice. And it's not hurting any other candidates by voting for someone, number 1. It encourages campaigns to engage voters on issues. Now that candidates are working for that second and third choice, they have to engage with more voters on things that are important to them. And as I mentioned, it helps ensures that winners are elected with that true majority of the voters, not the majority of the first place votes, but the majority of the voters' feelings and their preference. Ranked choice voting, it actually requires a candidate to combine different ways of working with different voters. they need that winning coalition requires first place votes, second place votes, and maybe even third place votes. And so they have to find common ground and reach out to voters and supporters of other candidates. And so it also helps decrease negative advertising because no one wants to send out an attack mailer and then the next day show up at someone's door asking for their second place vote if you just sent that mailer trashing their number one vote. And so a lot of jurisdictions find that with ranked choice voting, that negative advertising goes down as well. So quickly recap. I know there's a lot of information in a short amount of time, but our elections are changing this year, and we hope that with presentations like this, and you as a voter getting excited about these changes, will learn about this process by sharing it with others. And those changes are the open primary, which is what we used to do in Alaska for a long time. But now we're going back to the old system that will help increase participation among all Alaskans. You'll see all the candidates on one ballot. No longer will you see just Republicans on one ballot and everyone else on the other ballot. You as a voter now get to vote for whoever you would like to. And then the top 4 vote getters move on to the general election, which is where we see change number 2. Change number 2 is where we'll be using ranked choice voting, where you as a voter get to rank as many candidates up to 4 that you'd like. That winner needs to receive majority support of the district or of the state to win. And then all this counting, just like I showed you, will be transparent, and we'll be able to see how each race was won. Just a reminder, you've probably heard about it here in the news. We have a special election coming up here rather quickly. You probably have already received your ballot in the mail, but June 11th is the special primary election day. All of this, the special primary election is done by mail. And so when you receive that ballot in the mail, again, just pick one person in that long ballot. Just pick one, put that in your envelope. Make sure you get a witness. So make sure you'll have your signature and a witness's signature. And then the postage is paid for by the state of Alaska. So you don't need to put a stamp on it, but you need to make sure that it's in the mail by June 11th. When we get to August and we are voting in person again, you'll have a ballot that has both the special general for the U.S. House replacement seat, and it'll have the regular primary election for the other races. So in the special general, you'll be using ranked choice voting, and in the regular primary, it'll be just a pick one type of primary. And then in November, when we vote in person for the regular election, we'll be using ranked choice voting. And again, you can rank as many candidates as you like, up to 4, or rank as few as you like, as 1. If you haven't received your ballot in the mail, this is what it looks like. The first time in Alaska's history, we've seen this many candidates. It's actually very exciting to me. I'm actually really thrilled to see this, because to me, it kind of reflects Alaska. We have people in urban areas and rural areas, and people with lots of experience, people with no political experience, and young people and elders and people from all over. And so I think this is a really great reflection of Alaska and the type of excitement that people have for wanting to represent their state. So you as a community leader, how can you help? Like I said, lots of information, lots of changes that impact every voter. But you as someone with the networks and people who maybe meet with different organizations, or even your staff or things like that, how can you help make sure that these elections are successful? Alaskans for Better Elections has a tremendous amount of resources and willing and able to help in any way that we can. And so if there's an idea, or you think of something that would be a best way to connect with your family and friends or coworkers and neighbors, or your Rotary group, or any community council, or any group that you're a part of, we have resources that we can share and you can help provide to others who are looking for more information. Do you have a network that might like a presentation like this? I told Bill earlier this morning, I said, we give presentations like this every day, and we're happy to continue to help inform Alaskans. And so before they vote, they know really how to do this, and they feel very confident and empowered about this new system. So is there a way that we can present this information to a group that you're a part of? And then really making sure that you're sharing the correct information, information that's been vetted by the Division of Elections, just like this presentation, but information that's come from the state division elections is really the factual, no muss, no fuss, really just focused on the facts. And that's the best way to kind of share information, make sure that it's coming from the division elections or a group like Alaskans for Better Elections. We want people to be informed with the best and correct information, and you can help spread the word, whether that's through social media or email, or calling into radio, letter to the editor, anything, but just making sure you're sharing the correct information. So again, thank you to AEDC for allowing us to talk briefly about this. Happy to share my contact information if you have a question now or have a question later. Happy to engage with you and help share information or just give you some more details on anything you might have. But I'll stop my presentation. I know we've got some time for Q&A, and happy to talk through some of those. So thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Really appreciate it. Great presentation. Helped me to understand a few of the nuances that I hadn't really picked up on previously. So already you've educated one more voter. I've got just a few preset questions for those online. If you've got a question that you'd like to run by Jason, put it in the Q&A. But we'll go through, just got 3 questions real quick that might help to lead to some additional information and discussion. So first of all, Jason, this election season is shaping up to look a lot different than any other. What are some of the challenges you anticipate voters will experience this year with the implementation of a new electoral system? And how is Alaskans for Better Elections addressing them?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, anytime there's a system change in business or in your community, people always have questions. And if they're not, if something is not right in front of their face, or they have other things going on in their life and they show up to election day, or they might feel confused, or they might feel intimidated, especially you look at that big list, that big that 48 person ballot, and you might go, I don't know what to do, I don't know where to start. And so one of the challenges I think that we're experiencing is just those little details of, do I rank now with this ballot, or do I wait for the next election, or do I do I mail this in, or can I vote in person? And so our work really is just kind of some of that basic top line information to every Alaskan. You can imagine trying to get information out to 500,000 voters across our state. So what we do is just remind people about the basics. In the primary, it's pick one. No matter how many people are in that race, if it's 48 or 2, you only need to pick one in the primary race. And then in the general elections, that's when ranked choice voting comes into play. And again, you don't have to rank. You don't have to rank every person. We tell people only rank for those people that you support. If there's 2 or 3 people that you support, great. If there's 4, great. If there's just 1, again, that's your prerogative as a voter. And we want people to feel that as voters, they're in control of their ballot. And so our work, as I mentioned, is really kind of crisscrossing around the state. We're trying to do this both in real life, in webinars, with letters to the editor, any sort of information that we can share, along with the many other different organizations spreading the word. That's why we ask people to come alongside us and help get this information out as much as we can, because time is short and we want the correct information getting out in front of many voters. So if you have an idea of how to get information out, or like I said, if you have a network, we really, really appreciate it if people engage with us or engage with other community groups to help spread the word, because an informed electorate is the best electorate, and that's what we need for our state.
Excellent. So this one's a repetitive question, Jason. You spent a fair amount of time during your presentation, but I think it bears being asked again, and just making sure that people are very clear on this point. How will Alaskans know whether they should rank their ballot or not? And will there be detailed instructions provided in the ballot, in the elections, in the ballots or in the election booth, and how to do provided on how to do so?
Yeah, if you've received that mail-in ballot already, it's got a really kind of a step-by-step process. And if you look at the ballot, it's got the instructions on the top. Sometimes we rush through things. I'm putting together a bike for my kid. I don't read all the instructions sometimes, but obviously with voting and these changes, it's important to read the instructions and know when. So in the primary, you pick one. In the general, you can rank. And the ballot kind of it tends to be a little intuitive once people kind of see it, or they go through it themselves, kind of like in our mock election. In that primary ballot, there isn't really an opportunity to rank. You really just kind of have to fill in a bubble. Now, people might think, well, if I fill in 4 bubbles, is that ranking or anything like that? But again, in the primary, it's got the instructions. The primary ballot, it's got the instructions on the top. Just pick one. And then in the general elections, it has instructions on the top, and it shows choices. And it's people kind of start to understand, okay, this is where I can fill in the different choices. Luckily, Division Elections is doing a tremendous amount of work and been doing it for a long time now, proactively trying to get the word out. But they're training poll workers. They'll have information at the voting locations inside the booth. There'll be posters on how to do this. And if you do have additional questions, the Division Elections website has a lot of FAQs. They have videos, they have sample ballots people can look at, even practice if they feel intimidated, they want to try it out for themselves. And then our website, AlaskansForBetterElections.com, has a lot more detailed information about how this works and some of the tabulation, some of the back end things as well. And so really, we really just ask people to, again, get that factual information from the Division Elections or from us. But luckily, we know that these changes are coming, and people need to hear something 10, 20, 30 times. That's okay. And that's why we're out here, every day kind of spreading the word. But pick one primary, ranked choice general election.
My last question is just a pretty straightforward one, since much of our audience represents the business community, and both in today's webinar and in viewing the video that we post on YouTube following today's event. It's a real basic question, but I think it's an important one. How can the business community contribute to the voter education of the general public and help ensure everybody is ready to vote?
Yeah, it's a great question. As I said, we're trying to reach every voter, and the state of Alaska has limited resources. We have limited resources, and that's why we ask, every group that has a network to make this part of their priority when they're talking to their members, to their client, to their board of directors. Voting obviously is just a bedrock of our democracy, and if we want change to happen, if we want things to get moving forward in our state, we want voters to be able to feel empowered and inspired about getting to their participation is important, and really having a voice in our election system. This system is created really for voters. It's a voter focused change so that they feel that they have more say and they have more voice when it comes to voting. And so, we tell people to take advantage of this change to voters and really talk to candidates as well. Ranked choice voting is really about competition. It's really about kind of making candidates work harder for people's votes and their choices, because now that second and third choice is so important to a candidate to possibly win. How do they earn that? Well, they have to be more competitive. They have to reach out to more voters. And so it really has that kind of that business spirit when it comes to both a candidate and a voter being part of this process in a different way. And so if you have an email that you send out to employees every week or every month, or a large network that you have lunch with, really making sure that they feel informed, bring it up as a topic at the top of your staff meeting. Bring it up at your monthly luncheons, or whatever you're a part of, just making sure that people know that change is coming, and then ask how you can be helpful in spreading the information about those changes in a factual way. Excellent.
Well, Jason, I'm just going to take one last shot here. Anybody in the audience have a question? Let's go ahead and post it on Q&A right now. If not, then I think we're going to be going ahead and wrapping up here. Not seeing any questions popping up, Jason. I think you did a great job, a very comprehensive job of going through the ranked choice process and how it works in the voting booth. And can't thank you enough for taking what to some people appears to be a very complex issue and turn it into something that we could see and try and understand. And I think that's just great work on your part and on the part of your organization. Thank you so much for joining us today. We deeply appreciate your time and the contributions that you just made to furthering the education of the business community and the public at large.
Well, thanks for having us. And again, feel free. I know the video will be out there and our information is out there, but really we want to engage with as many people as possible. So feel free to reach out and let us know how we can help, and you can help as well.
Excellent. Katie, any other thoughts or comments, or are we all set to wrap things up?
We are all set. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Bill.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us today. Keep an eye out for our next AEDC Voice webinar. Watch for this one to be posted. Share it with your friends. And again, we appreciate everybody's support and thank you for joining us today. Everybody have a great day. Enjoy the sunshine.
Bye, guys. Have a good day.